This is the final photosynthesis experiment. I went through the comments on the last experiment that was completed, and I read through some of the suggestions because just like you, I was actually not super thrilled with our results. So I tried a couple of different things with this one, and I am going to repeat the experiment with these different steps. First thing, I took my geranium plant and I put it in a bucket for 2 full days, and it was hot. So they were really deprived of light, and they were deprived of water for making starch through photosynthesis. And then this morning, I took out the geranium plant, and at first sunlight, I found a leaf to clip this one onto. That was the frame that I used an experiment for. I thought I wanted to try this one more time with this same frame. I was disappointed because I couldn't find any paper clips this morning. I thought I knew where some were, and then I couldn't find them. So I think if I used paper clips, I could have gotten a tighter hold on that so that perhaps when the sun was shifting directions, there wouldn't have been a gap with the shadow moving around the hearts. So I don't think it's going to be as specific of the heart design, but that leaf was pretty well weakened from the process of me declining it from photosynthesis. So here is the leaf. Much better results than previously already. Okay, so we can see where the hearts were, and I think that the middle being connected is just because of the shadows moving around. So I'm going to place this leaf in a hot water bath to get it in that sinking state so it doesn't rise up in the rubbing alcohol once we take it. Now I also did think of another one based on some suggestions. I went to a camera shop and spoke to nice lady Jolie at Hooper's Camera in Thousand Oaks, and she and I talked about it, and she ended up giving me a picture frame, a slide frame, and on this frame is an engraved image of Mount Rushmore. Can you see the image pretty clearly? Pretty good positive and negative lighting on those, so I thought that that would come out nicely on the leaf. But then again, this is not a raw film. This is a processed film. So I wasn't quite sure how it would. I think we might get some of the positive and negative energy on that, but I'm not sure how well. So I'm going to take this second leaf that had that picture frame, and I'm going to put it in its bowl of water and push it down so that it gets used to sinking. I'm going to do this 3 times in 1-minute intervals, and each time adding fresh new hot water to it to get it really nice and sinky. And then we're going to move on to the next step, which I've already started. I've started giving 2 different cups. I have to use a different kind of cup on this one because I have to do a second bath for it. So I'm giving rubbing alcohol or hot water bath right now in each of these, and I have a smaller container that I had to find to use on this experiment. So after I've done the 3-minute intervals with these and given these guys a nice hot water bath, we're going to come back together and get started on removing the green, the chlorophyll from each of these leaves. I didn't start with mentioning the experimental question that we're trying to answer in this experiment. So the question that we're trying to answer is, how is it possible to leave a permanent image on a leaf, on a plant leaf? So at the beginning of it, what we did was cover one leaf with a film slide. This is a negative. It's already been exposed and processed. And then this is the film that I made with the hearts. Now, the problem with this one was I wasn't able to get that down as tight as I would like by using paper clips to flatten it, at least on the sides, so there was less of a shadow between the 2 hearts, because what we end up with is kind of a glob in the middle because the hearts transferred with the sunlight between them throughout the day. So what I've done is already given these each 3 1-minute hot water baths where they begin to lose that floating ability and they start to sink, so that now we can add them to these rubbing alcohol cups. These rubbing alcohol cups have been sitting in hot water. I have 2 of them. They have been sitting in hot water baths for several minutes now, so they're nice and hot. And I'm going to add some fresh boiling water to each of these. And we're going to attempt to drain the chlorophyll out of the plant leaves by adding each leaf to its own cup in the rubbing alcohol. So one at a time, I'm going to start with this bigger leaf, and I'm going to use my tweezers to pick up that leaf, and I'm going to add it to this larger cup and get it to flatten in there and swirl it around a little bit. And try to straighten it out too so that it keeps its shape proportionate. Just be careful when you start to poke at it the way I just did. You start to poke holes and that kind of messes with it. So just be careful not to do that. You should be using probably your spoon to pat it down. Just gently pat instead of poking like I did. So for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to swirl this around at intervals. I'm also going to replace the hot water at one point during that 15-minute time interval. And I'm going to do the same with this other cup and other leaf. So I'm going to take this leaf and add it to this hot water or rubbing alcohol into this little guy. And it's really hard to maneuver him. And I don't think my spoon will, yeah, the back of my spoon will fit. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to push that down. And then I'm going to add fresh boiling water. I have my water. I've been keeping it nice and hot so that it comes to a boil very rapidly. You can see it's already boiling. I'm going to add that to the cup. Each cup enough to get it so that it's submersed within the hot water bath. And then set a timer for 15 minutes. And during that 15 minutes, make sure to replace this water in each cup at least once. I've just finished the first 15-minute interval where I soaked the leaf in the rubbing alcohol that was in the hot water bath. I changed the hot water at least one time, and I repeatedly or intermittently swirled the cups, working on getting the chlorophyll out of the leaf. The water looks pretty green, so I'm going to pour this out. I'm going to remove the leaf, and then I was thinking about the next step, and this is something that I think I want to change and do different this time, is I want to warm the hot water, warm the rubbing alcohol before I add for this next 15-minute interval. So I want to give it another 5-minute hot water bath so that I can make sure it's just as hot the second time around as it was. And look at all that green we got out. And then I'm going to do the same for this guy. I'm going to pour it out. It's a bit green too. I had a lot of rubbing alcohol in that one. We're going to pour that out. I'm just going to pour it in here for the time so I can get that leaf out. And I'm going to let these leaves sit out and warm rubbing alcohol in hot water for 5 more minutes to make sure that this next time I do it for the 15-minute interval of trying to remove this chlorophyll, that it is just like step 1. I've removed the old rubbing alcohol and added new rubbing alcohol to each of these containers. And I've got freshly boiled water that I'm adding as the bath for each of these containers. And I'm going to actually first pour a little hot water on there and give it a little bath to get that chlorophyll washed off. And then I'm going to place it back in that rubbing alcohol for 15 more minutes. And again, I'm going to repeat that process of swirling it and changing the water out at least once during the 15-minute interval. I'm going to add hot water to this one. Perfect. And I'm going to take this second leaf, use my tweezers, sorry, to get it in that cup. Use the back of my spoon, push it down. There we go. Yeah, I should stop poking it so hard. And in you go in that hot water bath. Now for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to, Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes. Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes. Okay, had to make sure she was listening. For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to swirl this around in the rubbing alcohol, which I've already heated up, in the new freshly hot water. Again, trying to remove the chlorophyll in both of these. And I will replace this hot water, just the hot water, one more time in between that 15-minute interval. And we'll see how we do on removing the green chlorophyll. We're at the next step. I have done this bath in the rubbing alcohol and hot water a couple of times now, trying to remove the green from the plant leaf so that we can see if an image was imprinted on the plant leaf. So what I'm going to do now is pour out chlorophyll and pour out some water, and I'm going to take each of the plant leaves and rinse it in the water. Still has a lot of green on it, and I did that process a few times. I don't know why. I did that process a few times, and that still has a whole lot of green on it. Okay, so there's plant leaf number 1, which was this plant leaf, or this image that I'm trying to get placed on it. So we'll see. This one, remember, has a pretty offsetting color balance, a light and a dark area. So it might be, we might be able to see it, but considering I didn't get a whole lot of that green out, I'm not gonna keep my hopes up. Okay, so this other leaf, I think we got a lot more of the green out. Oh yeah, we definitely did. Okay, so this leaf worked much better, I think. We'll see with the chlorophyll, but perhaps yeah, we keep working, we keep trying, and then we see where we get. Okay, our step now is to add the iodine to each of the leaves, and then we're going to give it about a good 5 minutes of letting the iodine, which is a stain, a chemical stain that detects starch in the leaf. So I'm going to add iodine around each of these leaves so that we can see where it spreads to and if it detects starch in this leaf. I'm going to rinse that off because I dropped it. Okay. Oopsies. I think I was adding too much. Probably good on the iodine on that one. I'm just going to go with Add some on this side. Got a little bit of an iodine bath on that one. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to take my tweezers so I can separate them. And then we're going to give this 5 minutes or so to see how the stain reacts in each of these leaves. We've reached the end of the project. The iodine sat on the leaves for 15 minutes. This one, definitely, I didn't seem to do much good on that one. This one, however, I think I did have better results on this time. Can you see where the heart shapes were? So in answering the question, how is it possible to leave a permanent image on a plant leaf? We are learning through multiple experiments that it is possible, but you got to take a lot of steps to make it right. Some things we could suggest is, you know, trying some different things like a different type of leaf, or completing the process of the soaking in that rubbing alcohol to try to get rid of the chlorophyll even longer than I did. So our hypothesis for this plant would have been something like, if I remove the plant from sunlight, which is what we did initially, so that it cannot perform photosynthesis, it will start to use up its starch, and then we'll slowly stop performing cellular respiration because it is not getting that light for photosynthesis. So if I place it back in the sunlight with some kind of covering, in this case we tried 2 different types of coverings. This one was a little bit more successful than this one, probably too dark, I'm not sure, and maybe if I used a different type of paper. Someone even suggested using black paper, and I think that would be actually a pretty good idea too, because the paper ink might soak itself into the leaf a little bit. However, that would be messing with the starch. If I place it back in the sun with the covering over it, and then I remove the chlorophyll, I would expect that the area that was covered would be lighter because it wasn't able to perform photosynthesis while it was covered in the sunlight. And so that area where there was no photosynthesis happening, there was no cellular respiration happening, the cells were dying, so it's discolored in that area because it didn't perform photosynthesis. That's it. We've learned a lot through this experiment. It's been an ongoing process, but I think that through repeating this experiment several times and trying different kinds of maybe film paper, because I'm still not entirely sure what kind of negative they wanted for this. This is just a slide kind of picture. So, you know, that one was definitely not as successful, but I can kind of see the hearts in there. So a little bit better. Not as great as I would have hoped. I would definitely try with paper clips next time so that I could get more on there, and then maybe also try for a couple days in the sunlight. I only was able to do it 1 day in the sunlight for time, but also because every time I moved them, they were getting weaker and weaker, and they finally snapped off at the end of the day. So we had to do the project today while they were still alive enough to do the project. Okay. That's it.